The Normans used a system of land ownership known as feudalism. The king gave land to his lords in return for help in war. Landowners had to send certain numbers of men to serve in the army. Some peasants had their own land, but most were serf. They had a small area of their lord's land where they could grow food. In return, they had to work for their lord and could not move away. The same system developed in southern Scotland. In the north of Scotland and Ireland, land was owned by members of the clans, prominent families. In 1348, a disease, probably a form of plague, came to Britain. This was known as the Black Death. 1/3 of the population of England died, and a similar proportion in Scotland and Wales. This was one of the worst disasters ever to strike Britain. Following the Black Death, the smaller population meant there was less need to grow cereal crops. There were labor shortages and peasants began to demand higher wages. New social classes appeared, including owners of large areas of land, later called the gentry, and people left the countryside to live in the towns. In the towns, growing wealth led to the development of a strong middle class. In Ireland, the Black Death killed many in the Pale, and for a time, the area controlled by the English became smaller. In the Middle Ages, Parliament began to develop into the institution it is today. Its origins can be traced to the King's Council of Advisors, which included important noblemen and the leaders of the church. There were few formal limits to the king's power, but they could grow 15. In that year, King John was forced by his noblemen to agree to a number of demands. The result was a Charter of Rights called the Magna Carta, which means the Great Charter. The Magna Carta established the idea that even the king was subject to the law. It protected the rights of the nobility and restricted the king's power to collect taxes or to make or change laws. In future, the king would need to involve his noblemen in decisions. In England, parliaments were called for the king to consult his nobles, particularly when the king needed to raise money. The numbers attending parliament increased, and two separate parts, known as houses, were established. The nobility, great landowners, and bishops sat in the House of Lords. Knights, who were usually smaller landowners, and wealthy people from towns and cities were elected to sit in the House of Commons. Only a small part of the population was able to join in electing the members of the Commons. A similar parliament developed in Scotland. It had three houses called estates: the Lords, the Commons, and the clergy. This was also a time of development in the legal system. The principle that judges are independent of the government began to be established. In England, judges developed common law by a process of precedence, that is, following previous decisions, and tradition. In Scotland, the legal system developed slip